What if the worst day of your life was the only thing standing between you and a destiny you couldn't even imagine? For 24-year-old Maya Collins, getting fired was just the beginning. Soaked by the unforgiving city rain, holding a termination notice in her trembling hand, she felt her world collapse. She was just another poor waitress, chewed up and spit out by a system that didn't care. But in a forgotten corner of the diner she'd just been thrown out of, a man sat watching. He wasn't just any man. He was Julian Hawthorne, a billionaire whose name was whispered with awe in boardrooms across the globe. And he wasn't looking at her tears. He was staring at the simple, tarnished silver pendant around her neck. A pendant that would make his blood run cold and change everything. Forever. The Morning Star, diner on the corner of Lexington and 86th, was a symphony of controlled chaos, and Maya Collins was one of its most practiced conductors. The clatter of ceramic plates, the hiss of the griddle, the low hum of a dozen conversations. It was the soundtrack of her life. For 2 years, this place had been her sanctuary and her battlefield. It paid her rent for a closet-sized apartment in the Bronx, covered the last of her grandmother's lingering medical bills, and left just enough for instant noodles and bus fare. Her uniform, a pale blue dress with a white apron, was faded from 1,000 washes, but always impeccably clean. Her grandmother Maeve had taught her that. "Dignity, Maya," she'd say, her voice raspy but firm, "is the one thing they can't take from you unless you give it away." Maeve was gone now, 6 months cold in the ground, and the only thing Maya had left of her was the silver pendant that never left her neck. It was a tarnished locket, intricately carved with the image of a bird, a phoenix Maeve had called it, its wings curling to form a crescent moon. It was worthless to a pawn shop, but to Maya, it was the entire world. That Tuesday afternoon, the air was thick with the smell of approaching rain and the sour mood of Mr. Henderson, the diner's perpetually stressed manager. He prowled the floor, his beady eyes darting everywhere, looking for infractions. Maya moved with practiced grace, balancing a tray laden with burgers and milkshakes, a genuine smile fixed on her face for a family of tourists. She was good at her job. She was efficient, remembered the regulars' orders, and knew how to de-escalate a complaint before it reached Henderson's ears. But some complaints were impossible to avoid. They came in the form of Mrs. Beatrice Sterling, a woman whose weekly presence was a trial for the entire staff. She was old money, draped in Chanel, and dripping with condescension. She treated the diner like her personal court and the staff like her serfs. Today she was seated in booth 4, her lips pursed into a permanent sneer as she scrutinized the menu. "Waitress," she called out, snapping her fingers. The sound cut through the diner's hum like a whip crack. Maya was at her side in an instant. "Yes, Mrs. Sterling. Can I get you something?" "I ordered the Cobb salad, with the dressing on the side and no onions." "I am deathly allergic to onions," she said, emphasizing each word as if speaking to a child. "And this is contaminated." Maya looked at the salad. There were no onions. "Ma'am, I checked with the kitchen myself. There are absolutely no onions in your salad." "Don't you dare contradict me," Mrs. Sterling hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I can smell them. My throat is already beginning to feel tight. Are you trying to poison me?" It was a performance Maya had seen before. The allergy was a tool Mrs. Sterling used to get a free meal. Normally, Maya would just apologize and take it back. But today, after a 10-hour shift and a notice from her landlord about a rent increase, her patience was worn to a thread. "I assure you, ma'am, the kitchen is very careful about allergies." "Are you calling me a liar?" Mrs. Sterling's voice rose, turning heads. She picked up her water glass, her hand trembling with manufactured rage. "You incompetent little girl! You'll be lucky to be cleaning toilets by the end of the week." In that moment, as Mrs. Sterling gesticulated wildly, the back of her hand struck her own water glass. The glass tipped, sending a cascade of ice-cold water directly onto the lap of her expensive, cream-colored blazer. A collective gasp filled the diner. Mrs. Sterling looked down at the dark, spreading stain, then back at Maya. Her eyes widened, not with embarrassment, but with malevolent opportunity. She let out a piercing shriek. "She assaulted me! This waitress threw water all over me." Mr. Henderson materialized instantly. What's going on here? Mrs. Sterling, are you all right? This clumsy oaf attacked me, she screeched, pointing a finger at Maya. I come here for a quiet lunch, and I am harassed and assaulted. I want her fired. Now. Maya stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. No, that's not what happened. She knocked it over herself, Mr. Henderson, I swear. Henderson's face was a mask of panic. Mrs. Sterling was a well-connected woman. Her husband was a partner at a major law firm, and a single phone call from him could make Henderson's life a living hell. He didn't even look at Maya. His decision was already made. Vance, my office, now, he snapped. The walk to the back office felt like a mile. The sympathetic eyes of her co-workers, the smug glare from Mrs. Sterling, it all blurred together. Inside the cramped, cluttered office, Henderson didn't even offer her a seat. Pack your things, he said, his voice flat. I can't have staff who assault the customers. But I didn't. She's lying. Maya's voice cracked. Mr. Henderson, you know what she's like. Please, I need this job. It's all I have. What I know, he said, pulling her final paycheck from a drawer, is that Mrs. Beatrice Sterling is a valued customer, and you are replaceable. There are 100 girls who would kill for this job. You've been a liability. The words were like stones, each one a crushing blow. Liability, replaceable. The dignity her grandmother spoke of felt like a distant memory. She took the check, her hands numb. She didn't say another word. She walked to the small staff locker room, pulled off the apron, and changed back into her worn jeans and t-shirt. As she did, her fingers brushed against the cool metal of the Phoenix pendant. She clutched it, the familiar weight a small, cold comfort in the sudden emptiness of her world. She walked out the back door, not wanting to face the dining room again. The sky had opened up, and a torrential downpour was lashing the city streets. She didn't have an umbrella. Within seconds, she was soaked to the bone, the thin paper of her termination notice dissolving in her hand. She stood there on the pavement, rain mixing with the silent tears streaming down her face, a solitary, broken figure against the indifferent gray of the city. She felt utterly and completely alone, but she wasn't. Unseen in a quiet booth in the far corner of the diner, a man had watched the entire scene unfold. He was dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored dark suit, his presence unassuming yet commanding. He had been nursing a black coffee for over an hour, lost in thought. This diner held a ghost for him, a memory of a first date with his late wife, Eleanor, 30 years ago. He came here once a year on their anniversary to feel close to her. He had noticed the young waitress, Maya. He'd seen her quiet kindness, the way she helped an elderly man cut his pancakes, the patient smile she offered a crying child. He'd seen the blatant injustice of the scene with Mrs. Sterling. He was about to stand up to intervene, but Henderson had moved too fast. Now he watched through the rain-streaked window as the fired girl stood shivering in the storm. He felt a pang of anger at the casual cruelty of the world. He dropped $100 bill on the table and stood to leave, his visit to the past now soured. But as he turned, his eyes caught one last glimpse of her. She had lifted a hand to wipe the rain from her face, and as her collar shifted, a glint of silver caught the diner's warm light. Julian Hawthorne stopped dead. His breath caught in his throat. His entire body went rigid, and a shock, cold and electric, shot through him. The world around him faded into a dull roar. All he could see was that shape. He would know it anywhere. The wings, the crescent moon, the celestial phoenix. It couldn't be. It was impossible. He hadn't seen that design in 25 years, not since the day his sister, Amelia, had vanished from his life forever. Julian Hawthorne was a man who lived in a world of calculated certainties. As the CEO of Hawthorne Industries, a global technology and investment behemoth, his days were a meticulously scheduled sequence of board meetings, data analyses, and billion-dollar decisions. He commanded armies of lawyers, analysts, and engineers. He could predict market fluctuations and hostile takeovers with chilling accuracy. Emotion was a variable he had long ago learned to suppress, a liability in the cold, hard calculus of power. But the sight of that pendant shattered his carefully constructed armor. It was a ghost from a past he had buried under decades of work and relentless ambition. 25 years ago, the Hawthornes were just a family, not yet an empire. His father, a brilliant but stern metallurgist and designer, had built a high-end jewelry business. On his children's 18th birthdays, he had gifted them each a unique locket of his own design. They were mirror images, forged from a single billet of sterling silver. Julian's depicted a soaring eagle against a blazing sun. Amelia's was the celestial phoenix against a crescent moon. They were symbols of their bond, two halves of a whole. Amelia, his fiery, free-spirited younger sister. She had her father's creative genius, but none of his pragmatism. She clashed with him constantly, dreaming of being an artist while he pushed her towards business. The arguments grew more frequent, more vicious. The last one had been catastrophic. Amelia was 20, pregnant, and in love with a musician their father deemed unworthy. Harsh words were exchanged, an ultimatum was given. That night, Amelia packed a small bag, took the money from her trust fund, and disappeared. She left only a note for Julian. "I have to find a world where I can breathe. Forgive me. I love you. A." They had searched for years. Julian, using the family's growing fortune, had hired the best private investigators in the world. They found whispers and echoes, a trail that went cold in a small town in Oregon, and then nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. His father died of a heart attack 2 years later, a man broken by regret. Julian inherited everything and transformed the boutique jewelry company into the global powerhouse it was today. But the success always felt hollow. The gaping wound of his sister's disappearance never truly healed. Now seeing that locket, her locket, on the neck of a destitute waitress in a greasy spoon diner felt like a hallucination. His mind raced, constructing and discarding possibilities at lightning speed. Was it a coincidence? A replica? Had the original been stolen and sold, passed down through a chain of pawn shops and flea markets? He watched Maya through the window, her small frame trembling against the onslaught of the rain. He saw the raw despair on her face, the way she clutched the pendant. It wasn't just an accessory to her. The way she held it, it was an anchor. The same way Amelia used to clutch hers when she was scared or upset. His heart, a muscle long dormant, began to beat with a painful, unfamiliar rhythm. Hope. It was a dangerous, terrifying feeling. He had to know. He pushed the diner door open, the bell above it jangling a frantic, dissonant sound. The cold, wet air hit him, but he barely noticed. He strode out onto the sidewalk, his expensive leather shoes instantly soaked. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice deeper and more commanding than he intended. Maya flinched, turning around. Her eyes were red-rimmed and wary, the look of a cornered animal. She saw a tall, imposing man in a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. Her first thought was that he was from the diner, sent to harass her further. "I don't have anything to say," she stammered, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm leaving." "I'm not from the diner," Julian said, softening his tone, taking a half step back to give her space. "I was a customer. I saw what happened in there. It was an injustice." His words surprised her. She had expected accusation, not validation. Still, her guard was up. "Okay, well, thanks, I guess." She turned to leave again. "Wait," he said, the word more desperate this time. "Please, it's not about that. It's your necklace." Maya's hand flew to the pendant, covering it protectively. "What about it?" Her voice was sharp with suspicion. In her world, strangers who noticed things either wanted to steal them or sell you something. "Where did you get it?" Julian asked, his eyes locked on the piece of silver hidden beneath her hand. "It was my grandmother's," she said curtly. "It's not worth anything if that's what you're thinking." "I know what it is," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The design. It's a celestial phoenix, its wings forming a crescent moon. And on the back, near the clasp, there should be a tiny, almost invisible inscription. A maker's mark, a stylized H intertwined with a star." Maya froze. No one could know that. The inscription was so small, so faded, she herself had only found it years ago by angling it just right in the sunlight. She had assumed it was just a scratch. Her grandmother had never mentioned it. Slowly, her fingers trembling, she turned the locket over. She ran her thumb across the back, feeling the faint raised lines of the hidden mark. Her eyes darted from the locket back to the stranger's face. His expression wasn't greedy. It was pained, desperate, and filled with a profound, soul-shaking sorrow. Who was this man? How, how could you possibly know that? She whispered, the rain forgotten, the noise of the city fading away. Because, Julian Hawthorne said, his voice thick with 25 years of unanswered questions, my father made it, and he gave it to my sister, Amelia. The day before she disappeared, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Maya stared at the man, his words hanging in the rain-soaked air between them, too fantastic to be real. A billionaire's lost sister? A custom-made locket? It sounded like the plot of a movie, not something that happened on a Tuesday afternoon after being fired from a diner. Her mind, reeling from the trauma of the last hour, struggled to process it. Her first instinct was defense. This had to be a trick, a scam of some kind, though for what purpose she couldn't imagine. That's impossible, she said, her voice shaking but firm. This was my grandmother's. She had it her whole life. She raised me. This pendant is all I have left of her. I don't want to take it from you, Julian said urgently, seeing the panic in her eyes. He knew how he must look, a wealthy stranger accosting a vulnerable young woman on the street. I need to understand. My sister, Amelia, I've been looking for her for a very long time. This is the first sign of her I've had in over 2 decades. He looked at her, truly looked at her, past the wet clothes and the tear-streaked face. He saw the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her wide hazel eyes. They were the same eyes he saw in his own reflection every morning, the same eyes that stared back at him from the last photograph he had of Amelia. The resemblance was faint, diluted by a generation, but it was there. The thought was so staggering, he felt lightheaded. Look, he said, trying a different approach, his voice gentle. You're soaked and freezing. I'm sure you think I'm crazy. There's a small cafe just around the corner, the Daily Grind. Please, let me buy you a cup of coffee. Let me just explain. 5 minutes. If you still think I'm lying or insane, you can walk away and I will never bother you again. I'll even pay for a taxi to take you home. Maya hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Don't talk to strangers. Don't trust men in expensive suits. But the desperation in his eyes felt genuine. And the detail about the hidden H, that was a hook she couldn't ignore. How could he know? She was cold, jobless, and her day couldn't possibly get any worse. What was 5 more minutes? Okay, she relented, her voice small. 5 minutes. The Daily Grind was a warm, quiet haven filled with the rich aroma of coffee beans and baked bread. Julian guided her to a secluded booth in the back. A waitress came over, and Julian ordered 2 black coffees and a plate of croissants, noticing how gaunt Maya looked. Maya just nodded, pulling her damp jacket tighter around herself, her hand never leaving the pendant. As they waited, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Maya studied him. He didn't look like a threat. He looked haunted. The lines on his face weren't from arrogance, but from weariness. The weight of the world seemed to sit on his broad shoulders. The coffee arrived, and Maya wrapped her cold hands around the warm mug, the heat a small comfort. My name is Julian Hawthorne, he began, his voice low and steady. 25 years ago, my family consisted of my father, my sister Amelia, and me. My father was a jeweler, a true artist. He created 2 lockets, identical in craftsmanship, but with different designs, for Amelia and me. They were our most prized possessions. Our family, it was complicated. My father was a controlling man. Amelia was a free spirit. They clashed terribly. He paused, the memories visibly paining him. Amelia fell in love with someone my father disapproved of. She became pregnant. After a final terrible argument, she ran away. She was 20 years old. She took her locket with her. We never heard from her again. He looked directly at Maya, his gaze intense. I have spent a fortune trying to find her, trying to know what happened to her child. For 25 years, there has been nothing. Until today, when I saw that pendant on you. Maya listened, her skepticism warring with a strange, burgeoning sense of wonder. The story was fantastical, yet he told it with the simple, raw honesty of a man confessing a deep wound. My grandmother's name was Maeve Vance, Maya said softly. She was a nurse at St. Jude's Hospital in Queens for over 40 years. She adopted me when I was a baby. She told me my parents, she said they were young and couldn't take care of me. She said my mother left me this pendant, so I'd always have a piece of her. She fumbled with the clasp on the locket. It was stiff, and she rarely opened it. Finally, it sprang open. Inside were two tiny faded photos. On the right was a picture of her grandmother, Maeve, young and smiling. On the left was a picture of a baby, its face round and serious. Her own baby picture. Julian leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the locket. "May I?" he asked, his voice trembling. Hesitantly, Maya pushed it across the table. Julian picked it up with a reverence that surprised her. He didn't even look at the photos. He turned it over and over in his large hands, his thumb tracing the familiar curves of the phoenix. "It's hers," he breathed, the weight, the small imperfection on the hinge. "It's hers." He then looked up, and a new electrifying question entered his eyes. "Your grandmother? Maeve Vance? You said she was a nurse?" "Yes," Maya confirmed, confused by his change in focus. "At St. Jude's." Julian's mind was moving faster than ever, connecting dots she couldn't even see. A nurse, a runaway pregnant girl, a locket. It wasn't a story of theft or coincidence. It was a story of desperation and trust. Amelia, alone and scared, about to give birth. Who would she turn to? A kind nurse. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he used her name for the first time. "What is your birthday?" "March 12th, 2001, she answered automatically. Julian closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. He did the math in his head. Amelia had disappeared in June of 2000. She would have been due around March of the following year. It all fit. The timeline, the locket, the nurse. The pieces of a puzzle he'd been staring at for half his life were snapping into place with dizzying speed. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with a profound, terrifying, and beautiful certainty. "Maya," he said, his voice cracking, "I don't think my sister sold this locket. I don't think it was stolen. I think she gave it to your grandmother. I think she gave it to her for safekeeping, for her daughter." He looked at her, his expression a mixture of awe and grief. "The child I've been searching for all these years. I think it's you." Maya felt the floor drop out from under her. The words hung in the air, echoing in the sudden silence of her mind. "The child I've been searching for. I think it's you." It was too much. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. That's crazy. I'm nobody. My grandmother was a nurse. My parents were gone. I'm just a waitress. You're Julian Hawthorne." She said his name like it was a foreign word, something she'd only read in newspapers she used to clean off tables. "Being a waitress or being a Hawthorne doesn't change biology," Julian said gently, though his own heart was pounding. "It's the only explanation that makes sense. Amelia was alone and terrified of our father. He would have tried to take the baby. She needed to protect her child. What safer place than with a kind nurse who could offer a loving, anonymous home, far away from the Hawthorne name and its burdens?" He could see the terror and confusion warring on her face. He was a stranger, upending her entire identity with a story about a silver locket. He needed more than just a theory. He needed proof. He pulled out his phone, his hand surprisingly steady. He scrolled through a private, encrypted folder, one he hadn't opened in years. He found the photo and turned the phone to face her. It was a candid shot, taken at a family barbecue the summer before Amelia disappeared. A young woman with a vibrant, infectious smile and mischievous hazel eyes was laughing, her head thrown back. Her dark hair was a cascade of wild curls, and around her neck, gleaming in the sunlight, was the celestial phoenix pendant. Maya gasped. It wasn't just the pendant, it was the woman's face. In the curve of her smile, in the shape of her eyes, Maya saw a faint, undeniable echo of her own reflection. It was like looking at a ghost of what she might become, or a memory of where she had come from. "That's Amelia," she whispered. "That's her," Julian confirmed, his voice soft. My sister. Maya stared at the photo, her mind racing back through fragments of her childhood. Her grandmother Maeve had been loving, but also fiercely private about the past. Whenever Maya asked about her parents, Maeve's answers were always vague. Your mother was a beautiful soul, brave and strong. She loved you more than anything. She wanted you to have a safe, quiet life. A safe, quiet life, away from a controlling grandfather. It made a terrible kind of sense. My grandmother, Maya began, her voice trembling as she pieced it together. She left me a box. She told me not to open it unless I was in real trouble or when I turned 25. She said it contained everything I needed to know about where I came from. Where is this box? Julian asked, his voice sharp with urgency. It's in my apartment, under a loose floorboard in my closet, she said. She called it my in case of emergency kit. Being fired, broke, and potentially the long-lost niece of a billionaire certainly qualified as an emergency. We need to go there. Now, Julian said, already signaling for the check. He dropped several $100 bills on the table, not even waiting for change. My driver's waiting outside. The ride to her Bronx apartment was a blur. Maya sat in the back of a black Maybach, the silent plush interior, a stark contrast to the rattling subway cars she was used to. She felt like she was in a dream. Julian was on the phone, speaking in low, clipped tones. Marcus, I need you. Clear my schedule for the rest of the week. Yes, all of it. And I need a full background search on a nurse named Maeve Vance. Worked at St. Jude's in Queens, retired around 2015. I need adoption records, hospital logs, anything you can find from late 2000 to mid-2001. Yes, it's about Amelia. I think I found her. A long pause. Her daughter. Maya overheard the last words and felt another jolt. He was so certain. Could it really be true? Her apartment building was old and rundown, the hallway smelling of damp and cabbage. She fumbled with her keys, embarrassed by the peeling paint on her door, as the impeccably dressed billionaire stood patiently behind her. Inside, the apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean. A single room served as her living room, kitchen, and bedroom. Without a word, she went to the closet, knelt, and pried up the loose floorboard Maeve had shown her as a child. Beneath it was a small, sturdy wooden box with a simple brass latch. Her heart hammered as she lifted it out. It was heavy, filled with the weight of a lifetime of secrets. She placed it on her small, wobbly kitchen table. Julian stood beside her, his presence filling the small space. He didn't rush her. He simply waited, his breathing as quiet and steady as her own was ragged. With trembling fingers, Maya opened the latch. The first thing she saw was a thick stack of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. On top was a single envelope with her name, Maya, written in an elegant, looping script she didn't recognize. Beneath the letters was a folded document, an official birth certificate. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Name, Maya Maeve Hawthorne. Date of birth, March 12, 2001. Mother's name, Amelia Rose Hawthorne. Father's name, Jonathan Cole. Maya swayed and Julian put a steadying hand on her shoulder. Hawthorne, it was there, in black and white. Her name was Hawthorne. She wasn't an orphan in the way she'd thought. She had a mother, a father, a family. Tears welled in her eyes as she unfolded the top letter, the one addressed to her. The paper was old and soft, the ink slightly faded. My dearest Maya, if you are reading this, it means that Maeve has kept her promise and you are old enough to understand. My darling girl, I am so sorry. I am sorry I could not be the one to watch you grow, to kiss your scraped knees, to celebrate your birthdays. Please know that giving you up was the hardest and most loving thing I have ever done. My world was not a safe place for you. My father was a man who saw people as possessions, and I knew he would try to control your life as he tried to control mine. I couldn't let that happen. I wanted you to be free. I met Maeve at the hospital. She was my angel of mercy. She held my hand and promised me she would love you as her own, and I knew in my soul she was telling the truth. I have left this locket with you. It was a gift from my father, a rare moment of kindness from him. It is one of two. The other belongs to your uncle, my brother Julian. He is a good man. steadfast and strong. Perhaps one day, this locket will lead you back to him. He will know what it means. I don't know where my life will lead me after this, but I will spend every day loving you from afar. Be happy, my little phoenix. Rise from the ashes of a past you never knew and build a beautiful life. All my love, forever your mother, Amelia. The letter fell from Maya's fingers. The tears she had been holding back now flowed freely, hot tears of grief for a mother she'd never met, of shock at a life she never knew she had, and a strange, overwhelming sense of coming home. Julian picked up the letter, his own eyes misty as he read the words from the sister he had mourned for a quarter of a century. It was her voice, her spirit, alive on the page. He looked at the weeping young woman before him, his niece, his blood, the last living piece of his sister. "Welcome home," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion he thought he'd lost forever. "Welcome home, Maya Hawthorne." The next few days were a surreal whirlwind. Julian's head of security, a formidable but kind man named Marcus Thorne, arrived within the hour. With quiet efficiency, he authenticated the documents in the box, cross-referencing them with the information he was already digging up. The story was confirmed with startling speed. Hospital records from St. Jude's showed Amelia Hawthorne being admitted under the alias Rose Cole. Maeve Vance was the supervising nurse on duty. A private, sealed adoption was filed a week later, with Maeve as the sole parental guardian. The threads all wove together into an undeniable tapestry. Maya felt like she was watching a movie of someone else's life. One moment she was worrying about making rent. The next she was standing in the marble foyer of Julian Hawthorne's palatial penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. The space was vast and modern, filled with priceless art and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the glittering city below. It was a world away from her cramped Bronx apartment. "This will be your home now, if you want it," Julian said, his voice echoing slightly in the large space. "There are guest suites, but this was Amelia's old wing. I've kept it just as she left it." He led her down a quiet hallway to a set of double doors. Inside was a suite of rooms that were a stark contrast to the rest of the penthouse's cold modernism. They were warm and bohemian, with a four-poster bed, walls covered in art books, and a small balcony. On a dressing table, untouched for 25 years, sat a silver-backed hairbrush and a framed photo of a younger Julian and Amelia, laughing together, their lockets gleaming. The reality of it all crashed down on her. This was her mother's room. She ran a hand over the dusty books, imagining her mother sitting here, dreaming of a life of freedom. The grief was a fresh, sharp pang. Julian gave her space, understanding her need to process. He busied himself with the logistics of her new life. He set up a meeting with his personal bankers to establish a trust fund for her, a staggering sum that made Maya feel faint. He introduced her to his legal team to have her name officially restored to Maya Maeve Hawthorne. "This is your birthright," he explained one evening, as they sat in his vast living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. "The Hawthorne fortune was built on our father's work, which Amelia had as much a right to as I did. This is her share, passed on to you." "I don't know what to do with all of this," Maya confessed, looking at the portfolio of assets that contained more zeros than she had ever seen. "A week ago, I was worried about a $50 tip." "You don't have to do anything right now," Julian said kindly. "Just get to know your family. Get to know me." And so they did. He told her stories about Amelia, her rebellious streak, her incredible talent for painting, her fierce loyalty. Maya, in turn, told him about Maeve, her quiet strength, her boundless kindness, her lessons on dignity and resilience. They found common ground in their shared loss and their newfound connection. But even amidst this life-altering discovery, a shadow lingered. The memory of the humiliation at the Morning Star Diner, the smug face of Mrs. Sterling, and the cowardly indifference of Mr. Henderson. One afternoon, Marcus Thorne entered Julian's study with a file. "Sir, as requested, a full report on the incident." Julian opened it. It contained security camera footage from the diner, which Marcus's team had quietly acquired, a financial profile on Mr. Henderson, and a detailed background on Beatrice Sterling and her husband's law firm. "Henderson is drowning in debt," Marcus summarized. He's terrified of losing his job. That's why he buckled so quickly. As for Mrs. Sterling, she has a documented history of this kind of behavior. Dozens of complaints against her at high-end establishments, all quietly settled by her husband's firm, Sterling, Cromwell, and Finch. Julian's face hardened. He remembered the look on Maya's face as she stood in the rain, broken and alone. A cold, precise anger, the kind he usually reserved for hostile takeover attempts, settled over him. "She picked the wrong waitress to bully," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "and he picked the wrong employee to fire." Maya, who had entered the study to ask Julian a question, overheard his last words. "What are you going to do?" she asked, a knot of anxiety in her stomach. "Please don't hurt them." Julian turned to her, his expression softening. "Hurt them? No. Ruin them. Perhaps, but we're going to do it the Hawthorne way, with precision and with a purpose." He looked at Marcus. "Get our legal team on the phone and find out who the biggest clients of Sterling, Cromwell, and Finch are. I believe a few of them are also partners with Hawthorne Industries. It's time they reviewed their legal counsel's ethical standards." He then looked back at Maya. "As for the diner, I think it's time we invested in the hospitality industry, specifically in a certain diner on Lexington and 86th. I have some ideas on how to improve their management and employee welfare policies." A slow smile spread across Maya's face. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The phoenix on her pendant was a symbol of rising from the ashes. And she was beginning to understand that true power wasn't about crushing your enemies, but about rewriting the rules so they could never harm anyone again. The fallout was not a bomb, but a series of quiet, devastatingly effective surgical strikes. Julian Hawthorne did not operate with brute force. He manipulated the intricate levers of power that were invisible to most of the world. For Mr. Henderson, the reckoning came not in the form of a threat, but an offer he couldn't refuse. A quiet, unassuming man from a private equity firm visited the Morningstar Diner one morning. He explained that his firm, which just so happened to be a subsidiary of a much larger holding company, had purchased the diner's building and the business itself. The deal had been negotiated directly with the overwhelmed owner, who was thrilled at the generous buyout. Mr. Henderson was offered a new contract. He would no longer be a manager. He was being demoted to a trainee position, and his first task was to enroll in a mandatory, month-long employee sensitivity and management ethics program. The program was funded by a new grant from the Hawthorne Foundation. His salary would be cut significantly, but if he completed the program and demonstrated a fundamental change in his approach, he might one day earn a management position again, at a less prestigious location. Faced with unemployment and blacklisting in the industry, he accepted, his face pale and clammy. The diner's staff, meanwhile, received an immediate raise, full health benefits, and a new profit-sharing plan. For Beatrice Sterling, the consequences were more subtle and far more terrifying. One evening, her husband, a senior partner at his law firm, received a call from his largest client, a multi-billion-dollar tech corporation that was a key partner of Hawthorne Industries. The client expressed grave concerns about the reputational risk associated with their legal representatives, citing a pattern of public misconduct by a partner's spouse. The implication was clear. Get your house in order or lose the biggest account that keeps your firm afloat. That night, the Sterling household was not a happy one. Beatrice was confronted not with an accusation of bullying a waitress, but with the cold, hard fact that her arrogance was about to cost her husband millions. Her credit cards were canceled, her social engagements curtailed. She was suddenly stripped of the power she so carelessly wielded. The public humiliation she had inflicted on Maya was turned back on her in the form of private, suffocating shame. Maya watched all of this unfold from a distance, with a sense of awe and a little bit of fear at the sheer scale of Julian's influence. He never raised his voice, never made a direct threat. He simply adjusted the world around people until it forced them to confront the consequences of their actions. But her own journey was just beginning. Life in the penthouse was a lesson in contrast. She learned to navigate charity galas and board meetings, her simple diner uniform replaced by designer dresses chosen by Julian's personal stylist. Yet she always felt most herself in the quiet moments. sharing a simple meal with Julian in the massive kitchen, or reading in her mother's old room, the Phoenix pendant a warm weight against her skin. One afternoon, Julian called her into his study. He had a gift for her. It was a large leather-bound portfolio. "I told you about my father's jewelry business," he said. "After he died, I absorbed it into the larger company and let it go dormant. But I kept all of his designs, all of his notes. Amelia loved to sketch ideas with him. Many of these are hers." Maya opened the portfolio. It was filled with breathtakingly beautiful, intricate designs for necklaces, bracelets, and rings. The style was unique, a blend of classic elegance and wild natural forms. She recognized her mother's artistic spirit immediately, and on one page she saw it, the original concept sketch for the celestial phoenix and its twin, the solar eagle. "I want to relaunch Hawthorne Jewels," Julian said, his eyes on her, "and I want you to run it. This is your legacy, your mother's legacy." Maya was speechless. "Me? Julian, I don't know anything about running a business. I'm a waitress." "You are a waitress," he corrected her gently. "You are a Hawthorne. You have your mother's eye and your grandmother's strength. You have a deep understanding of people. That's more important than any business degree. I will give you the best team, the best resources. The rest is up to you." It was a terrifying, exhilarating proposition. To take her mother's dormant dreams and bring them back to life. To build something, not just inherit it. It was a chance to define herself not as the poor waitress or the lost heiress, but as Maya Hawthorne, a creator in her own right. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I'll do it." A rare, wide smile spread across Julian's face. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire he remembered in his sister. Amelia was gone, but her spirit, her legacy, was burning brighter than ever in her daughter. A few weeks later, Marcus Thorne delivered one final piece of the puzzle. After an exhaustive, globe-spanning search, they had found him. Jonathan Cole, Maya's biological father. He was a music teacher at a community college in Portland, Oregon. He had married, had 2 other children, and lived a quiet, unassuming life. He had never known Amelia was pregnant. She had left before she had the chance to tell him, trying to protect him from her father's wrath. Julian arranged a meeting. Maya flew to Portland on a private jet, her heart a tangled mess of hope and fear. She met him in a quiet park. He was a kind-faced man with graying hair and gentle eyes. When she told him who she was and showed him a picture of Amelia, he broke down in tears. He had loved her, he said, and had never understood why she disappeared. It was not a fairy tale reunion. He had another family, another life, but it was a healing one. She met her half-siblings, a boy and a girl who looked at her with wide, curious eyes. For the first time, she saw a future filled not with ghosts, but with a large, complicated, and living family. She had an uncle who was like a father who was a kind stranger, and siblings she was just beginning to know. The empty spaces in her life were finally beginning to fill. A year passed. The Maya Hawthorne who stood on the stage at the glittering relaunch event for Hawthorne Jewels was a different woman from the one who had shivered in the rain outside a diner. She was dressed in an elegant, deep blue gown, her hair styled in soft waves. Around her neck, polished and gleaming under the lights, was the celestial phoenix pendant. It was no longer just a memento of her past, but the centerpiece of a new beginning. The launch was a staggering success. The debut collection, named the Amelia Collection, was based on her mother's original designs. It was praised by critics for its unique blend of strength and grace. It sold out within hours. Maya had found her calling. She had her mother's artistic vision and a sharp, intuitive business sense that surprised everyone, including herself. She wasn't just running the company. She was shaping it, infusing it with a conscience. A significant portion of the profits from Hawthorne Jewels was directed into a new branch of the Hawthorne Foundation, the Maeve Vance Initiative. It was a program Maya had designed herself, providing grants, emergency housing, and legal aid to service industry workers facing unjust termination or exploitation. She remembered the feeling of hopelessness, of being utterly disposable, and she vowed that she would use her power to ensure fewer people ever felt that way. Her first official act for the initiative was to visit the Morningstar Diner. It had been renovated, the old worn booths replaced with comfortable new ones, but it retained its classic charm. The new manager, a bright young woman who had been a waitress alongside Maya, greeted her with a warm hug. Maya sat in a booth, the same section where Mrs. Sterling used to sit, and ordered a coffee. The staff, now well paid and secure in their jobs, buzzed around with a newfound energy and pride. It was more than just a diner now. It was a symbol of her journey. Later that week, she was in her office, a beautiful sunlit space overlooking the city, reviewing new designs when Julian walked in. He was holding a small velvet box. "I have something for you," he said. "Well, for both of us." He opened the box. Inside, nestled on the velvet, was his locket, the solar eagle. He had had it restored to its original brilliance. "My father made them as a pair," he said. "They belong together." He then handed her a second, smaller box. She opened it to find a stunningly delicate silver bracelet. The clasp was a miniature, perfectly rendered phoenix. "A new piece," he said, smiling. "For the new collection, and for my brilliant niece." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She looked from her uncle's proud face to the pendant she wore, to the bracelet in her hand. Her life had been reset by a twist of fate, by an object of silver that held a universe of secrets. She had lost a grandmother, but gained an uncle, a father, siblings, and the mother she'd never known through her art and her letters. She had been fired from a menial job, stripped of her meager living, and pushed to the absolute brink. But in the ashes of that old life, she had been forced to look up, and in doing so, she was found. The phoenix had not just been a design on a piece of metal, it had been a prophecy, a promise that even from the most devastating fires, a new life, stronger and brighter than before, could rise. And Maya Hawthorne, holding her family's legacy in her hands, was finally ready to fly. Maya's story is a powerful reminder that destiny can be found in the most unexpected of places. A simple heirloom, a moment of injustice, and a chance encounter were all it took to unravel a lifetime of secrets and unlock a future beyond her wildest dreams. From a penniless waitress to a compassionate CEO, she proves that our circumstances don't have to define our worth. It's a story about kindness, hidden legacies, and the incredible truth that sometimes hitting rock bottom is the first step to discovering who you were always meant to be. Her journey from the ashes is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. What did you find most incredible about Maya's story? Have you ever felt like a single moment changed your life forever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable real-life stories. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update from us. Thanks for listening.